Have you ever felt like just a shadow in your own family, watching everyone else take the spotlight while you're left in the cold? That was me. Until I hit my breaking point and decided it was time for things to change. Hey, I'm Riley Chen, and for years, my family treated me like I didn't matter. Before I walk you through how everything flipped upside down, tell me, where are you watching from? Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss the wild ride ahead. Let's dive right into my story. The basement light flickered as I dragged my suitcase down the creaking wooden stairs, each step a familiar descent into my designated holiday position, beneath everyone else. Riley, don't forget to check if there are enough clean towels down there. Mum's voice echoed from upstairs, where the real Christmas was happening. Already did, Mom, I called back, knowing she probably wasn't listening anymore. I'm 27 years old, and this marks the 8th consecutive Christmas I've been relegated to the basement while my siblings get proper guest rooms. The cold concrete floor and the faint smell of mildew had become my holiday tradition. Grandma May appeared. At the top of the stairs, her small figure silhouetted against the warm light of the hallway. Riley, I brought you an extra blanket. It gets so cold down here. Thanks, Grandma. I smiled, genuinely grateful for the one person who seemed to notice me. I don't understand why Linda keeps putting you down here, she whispered, her eyes darting nervously up the stairs. Eric and Jessica both have lovely rooms upstairs. It's fine, I lied, taking the blanket from her frail hands. I'm used to it. You shouldn't have to be used to it, she said firmly before shuffling back. Upstairs, I had barely finished making up the pull-out couch when thunderous footsteps announced my brother's arrival. Hey, basement dweller! Eric's booming voice filled the space as he bounded down the stairs. At 32, he still acted like the golden child he'd always been. Mom sent me to tell you dinner's in 20. I'll be up, I said, smoothing the wrinkled sheets. So, he leaned against the wall, arms crossed. Still pushing papers at that dead-end admin job? It's actually going well. I just got promoted to office manager. Eric snorted. Office manager, wow. Meanwhile, I just closed that Henderson deal. 7 figures, Riley. 7. Congratulations, I said mechanically. You know. He lowered his voice. You could try a little harder. Make something of yourself. Maybe then Mom and Dad would. Would what? Let me sleep in a proper bed at Christmas? Eric's expression shifted from mockery to discomfort. Don't be dramatic. You know how Mom is about appearances. My clients sometimes drop by and Jessica has her colleagues. You're just... invisible? I was going to say flexible. He checked his watch. Anyway, dinner. 20 minutes. After he left, I sat on the edge of the lumpy mattress, staring at the single tiny window near the ceiling that offered a glimpse of snow-covered ground. Upstairs, I could hear laughter. Jessica had arrived with her latest boyfriend. I'd spent 3 weeks helping her prepare application materials for her master's program last year. She never thanked me, and when she got in, she told everyone it was her boyfriend who had helped her. My phone buzzed. A text from Dad. Can you pick up ice? We're out. Not, how's the basement? Or, sorry about the sleeping arrangements. Just another errand. I texted back a quick, sure, and grabbed my coat. As I trudged through the snow to my car, Aunt Julia pulled into the driveway. Riley! Merry Christmas! She called, emerging with armfuls of presents. Merry Christmas, Aunt Julia. Need help? Please. She handed me several bags. Basement again this year? I nodded. She sighed. Your mother. She didn't finish the thought. She never did. Aunt Julia saw everything but rarely spoke. Up. "It's okay," I said automatically. "No, it's not," she replied quietly. "You know, I brought that special coffee you like, the one with caramel." It was a small gesture, but it nearly brought tears to my eyes. "Thanks." Later at dinner, I sat in my usual spot, the extra chair crammed in at the corner of the table. Mom held court at the head, directing conversation like a conductor. "Eric, tell everyone about your new condo," she beamed, refilling his wine glass before turning to Jessica. "And Jess, those earrings are divine. From Milan." I silently passed dishes and poured water for Grandma May, who patted my hand gratefully. "What about you, Riley?" Grandma asked loudly, creating a sudden lull in conversation. "How's your job going?" Before I could answer, Mom cut in. "Riley's still figuring things out, aren't you, dear? Not everyone blooms early." "Actually, I got promoted." "More potatoes, anyone?" Mom interrupted, sliding the serving bowl toward Dad, who hadn't looked at me once during dinner. Later, as everyone moved to the living room for drinks, I stayed behind to clear dishes. "I'll help," Grandma offered, picking up a plate. "No, you go rest," I insisted. "I've got this." "You always do," she said softly. "You always take care of everything, and they never see it." I swallowed the lump in my throat. "It's fine." "It's not." She touched my cheek. "One day they'll understand what they've been missing all these years." As I loaded the dishwasher alone, listening to the muffled sounds of my family, enjoying Christmas Eve without me, I wondered how many more holidays I would spend in the shadows, giving everything and getting nothing in return. What no one knew, not even Grandma, was how much I'd sacrificed. The money I'd loaned Eric when his first business failed. The nights I'd spent caring for Mom when she was sick, while Jessica was too busy and Eric was too important to help. The 1,000 small kindnesses that disappeared into the family ether, unacknowledged. I closed the dishwasher and pressed start, watching the steam begin to rise inside. Something had to change. "Riley, I swear I'll pay you back this time." Eric paced my apartment, running his hands through his expensively cut hair. "That was 5 years ago, my first year out of college. That's what you said last time." I reminded him, already reaching for my checkbook. 3,000 is a lot, Eric." I know. His voice took on that desperate edge I had heard too many times. "But this investment is guaranteed. Once, it pays off. I'll give you back everything, with interest." I sighed, writing the check I knew I'd never see again. "Just be careful, okay? You're a lifesaver, Riley. Seriously." He hugged me quickly, already halfway out the door. Mom and Dad can never know about this. It would kill them to think I'm struggling. 2 months later, at a family dinner, Mom couldn't stop gushing. "Eric's financial instincts are just remarkable. That investment you made. What was it, honey?" "Tech startup," Eric mumbled, avoiding my eyes. "He's always been so smart with money," Mom continued, beaming. "Unlike some people who just can't seem to get ahead." Her pointed glance in my direction made my stomach clench. "Actually," Dad chimed in, "maybe Eric could give you some financial advice, Riley." I stared at my brother, waiting for him to acknowledge where his smart investment money had come from. He shoveled food into his mouth, suddenly fascinated by his plate. "I'm doing fine," I said quietly. "Fine isn't thriving," Mom countered. "Eric is thriving." That night, Jessica called me in tears. "I totally messed up my application essay," The deadline's tomorrow." I glanced at my watch. 11 p.m. Bring it over. We stayed up until 4 a.m., me rewriting while she dozed on my couch. When her acceptance letter came 3 months later, she posted on social media, "Couldn't have done it without my amazing boyfriend's help. Love you, babe." Blessed. Not a word about the night I'd sacrificed sleep and a work day to save her application. The worst was when Mom got sick. Pneumonia hit her hard at 65. She was hospitalized for a week. "I have that conference in Chicago," Jessica explained over the phone. "Career-defining opportunity." "And I'm closing the Peterson deal," Eric added. "Worth millions to the company. You understand?" So I took vacation days, sat in the hospital for 12-hour stretches, handled the insurance paperwork, cooked meals for Dad, who was useless in a crisis. When Mom recovered, she told her friends, "My family was so supportive. Eric sent the most gorgeous flowers every day, and Jessica called constantly from her important conference." I was invisible again. "They take advantage of your kindness," Grandma May told me one afternoon as we sat in her small apartment. She poured tea into delicate cups her mother had brought from China. "You have a generous heart, Riley, like your grandfather." "They're family," I said weakly. "What else can I do?" "Family goes both ways." She reached into a drawer and pulled out an old brass key. "Take this." "What is it?" "Something important. You'll know when to use it." She closed my fingers around it. Some treasures are hidden in plain sight. I tucked the key into my wallet, assuming it was just one of Grandma's mysterious lessons. She loved parables and metaphors. Meanwhile, I continued my quiet life. My job wasn't flashy, administrative work for a local engineering firm. But I was good at it, organized, reliable. The partners trusted me. "Never understand why you waste your talents here," Mom would say during our infrequent phone calls. "No ambition." What she didn't know was that I lived simply but saved aggressively, invested carefully, created a financial cushion that groaned steadily, while Eric burned through money, and Jessica charged designer clothes to credit cards she couldn't pay off. One Sunday morning, Grandma May called. "Come visit today. Bring cookies." Her tone was odd, so I picked up her favorite almond cookies and drove over. "Sit," she commanded when I arrived. "Listen." "What's wrong?" "They're planning to sell the cabin." The cabin, our family's vacation home near the lake, passed down from my grandfather. The only place I'd ever felt truly peaceful. "Who's planning this?" "Your mother." "Eric needs money. Again. Jessica, too. They're convincing your father it's time to liquidate the asset." She snorted. "Fancy words for selling memories." My heart sank. "But they can't just... They think they can." Her eyes sparkled. "They've forgotten something important." "What?" She tapped my wallet. "The key I gave you, it opens more than doors, Riley." Before she could explain, her phone rang. Mom, calling to remind her about an upcoming doctor's appointment. Our conversation shifted, the moment lost. Driving home, I thought about the cabin, the summers spent there as children, before status and success became the family currency, before I became the family shadow. That night, I dreamed of the cabin, the worn wooden dock, the screened porch where Grandpa taught me to play chess, the small bedroom under the eaves that had always been mine, the only space in any family property that felt like it belonged to me. In the dream, Grandma stood on the porch, holding the brass key out to me. Behind her, Mom, Dad, Eric, and Jessica pounded on windows that wouldn't open, their mouths moving in silent demands. I woke up clutching my pillow, a strange determination settling over me. The next day, I got a text from Mom. Family meeting next month. Important discussion about the future of the cabin. Be there. Not a request, a command. I looked at the message for a long time, then opened my wallet and took out the old brass key. Turned it over in my fingers, watching it catch the light. For the first time, I noticed tiny numbers engraved on its surface. 1458. A lockbox number? A safe combination? Whatever it was, I had a feeling things were about to change. Christmas Eve dinner was in full swing, the dining room packed with extended family. Uncle Robert and his wife from Boston, cousins from Seattle, even Dad's reclusive brother, who rarely left his cabin in Montana. The table groaned under Mom's elaborate spread. Prime rib, rosemary potatoes, her famous cranberry chutney that she spent days perfecting. I'd been assigned to the awkward folding chair again, wedged between Cousin Theo and the corner where the sideboard jutted out, making it impossible to get up without asking everyone to move. "Wine, anyone?" I offered, reaching for the bottle. "Not for Riley," Mom said with a sharp laugh. "Remember last year when you had 2 glasses and told everyone about that silly blog you were thinking of starting?" Heat rushed to my face. I mentioned a personal finance blog. Actually a good idea given my careful investing. But Mom had dismissed it as playing on the internet. "I wasn't going to," I started. "Linda, the potatoes are wonderful," Aunt Julia interrupted, throwing me a sympathetic glance. "So, Eric," Mom turned to my brother, "tell everyone about the new client you landed. What was it? 5 million? Eric launched into his rehearsed speech about business development strategies and networking prowess. Jessica nodded enthusiastically, occasionally touching her boyfriend Mark's arm as if to say, "See how important my family is." "And what about you, Riley?" Uncle Robert asked, during a rare lull. "Still at that same company?" Before I could answer, Mom jumped in. "Riley's job is stable." She said it like it was a terminal illness. "Not everyone can be ambitious like Eric and Jessica." "I actually got promoted," I said quietly. "Office manager now." "Office manager," Mom repeated with a tight smile. "Well, that's something. Though I suppose someone has to order the coffee and schedule the meetings." Titters around the table. Grandma May frowned. "I do a lot more than that," I said, louder, this time. "I manage a team of 5 administrators and oversee all the operational logistics for—" "Jessica," Mom cut me off. "Tell everyone about that amazing project you're leading, the one with the international clients." And just like that, I was erased again. Later, as everyone moved to the living room for dessert, I heard Eric and Jessica whispering near the kitchen. "Mom says we can list the cabin in February," Eric said. "Split 3 ways after they take their share. We could each clear about 80,000. "Perfect timing," Jessica replied. "Mark and I need a down payment for that condo." "What about Riley?" Eric asked, lowering his voice. Jessica scoffed. "What about Riley? Mom says we offer 10% out of our portions. Enough to shut up any complaints, but not enough to matter." "Sounds fair," Eric agreed. "It's not like Riley ever uses the place anyway." I stood frozen, in the hallway, coffee pot in hand, suddenly understanding why Mom had emphasized my presence at next month's family meeting. "You okay, sweetie?" Aunt Julia appeared beside me, empty mug extended. I blinked rapidly. "Fine, just tired." "I heard what they said," she whispered, taking the pot from my shaking hands. "It's not right. Before I could respond, Mom's voice carried from the living room. "Where's that coffee? And Riley? We need more napkins." I moved robotically, gathering napkins, thoughts spinning. The cabin had been in our family for 3 generations. Grandpa built it himself. I'd assumed we'd all inherit equal shares eventually. As I returned to the living room, I overheard Mom talking to Dad's brother. "We've carried Riley long enough," she was saying. "Always the underachiever. As soon as we sell the cabin, we can finally move on. Eric needs capital for his new venture, and Jessica and Mark are looking at properties. It's time everyone got what they deserve." The napkins fluttered from my hand to the floor. Mom looked up, irritation crossing her face when she realized I'd heard. Then something worse than anger. Pity. "Riley, honey, pick those up, and bring the good dessert plates, not the everyday ones." Something snapped inside me. Years of swallowed hurt crystallized into a hard, sharp point. "No," I said. The room went silent. "Excuse me?" Mom's voice could have frozen fire. I said, "No, I'm not picking up napkins. I'm not fetching plates. And I'm not sleeping in that cold basement another night." Dad stood up, face reddening. "Riley, that's enough. You're embarrassing yourself." "I'm embarrassing myself." I laughed, the sound strange and brittle. "I've spent my entire adult life being treated like a servant in my own family. I've lent money I never got back, sacrificed time I never got thanked for. And now you're planning to sell off the one place that matters to all of us without even having a real conversation?" Eric stepped forward. "You're making a scene. This isn't the time." "When is the time, Eric? When you need another loan? When Jessica needs another application fixed? When Mom needs someone to blame for not living the perfect life she imagined? That's enough." Mom slammed her hand on the side table. "You've always been dramatic, always looking for attention." Attention? I was trembling now. "I have done nothing but disappear for this family. I sleep in the basement while you all take the good rooms. I sit in the corner at holidays. I listen to you mock my job, my life, my choices, all while I'm the one who shows up whenever anyone needs help." The silence that followed was deafening. Cousins stared at their plates. Aunt Julia watched with wide eyes. Only Grandma May was smiling, a small, satisfied smile. "I think," Dad finally said, voice tight with controlled anger, "you should go cool off." "Yes," I agreed. "I should. And I won't be sleeping in the basement. I'm going to a hotel." "Don't be ridiculous," Mom hissed. "What will people think? I don't care anymore." I turned to leave, then paused. "And about the cabin. We'll see about that." As I climbed the basement stairs for my suitcase, Grandma May appeared at my side. "The key," she whispered urgently. "It's time." "What does it open?" I asked. "The truth," she replied. "Box 1458, First National Bank downtown. Go tomorrow morning." I hugged her fiercely. "I don't understand." "You will." She pressed something else into my hand, a small envelope. "And take this. Your grandfather wanted you to have it when the time was right." I slipped both items into my pocket, grabbed my suitcase, and walked out the front door into the snowy night, ignoring the voices calling me back. For the first time in memory, I felt strangely, terrifyingly free. The hotel room was sterile and anonymous, but still warmer than the basement. I sat cross-legged on the bed, turning Grandma's key over and over in my fingers, the envelope unopened beside me. My phone had exploded with messages. "Mom, you've ruined Christmas. I hope you're happy." "Dad, your mother is very upset. You need to apologize." Eric. Not cool, Riley. Mom's crying. Jessica. Drama queen much? Get over yourself. Only Aunt Julia's message was different. I'm proud of you. Call if you need anything. I silenced my phone and finally opened the envelope. Inside was a folded piece of paper, a letter in my grandfather's shaky handwriting, dated 3 years before his death. My dear Riley, if you're reading this, it means your grandmother has given you the key, and the time has come for you to know the truth about our family cabin. When I built that place with my own hands, I wanted it to be a legacy for generations, a place where our family could always return to what matters. I've watched you over the years, how you notice the changing leaves, how you sit quietly on the dock at sunset, how you treasure the small moments that everyone else rushes past. You understand what the cabin truly means, not as property or investment, but as a piece of our history and hearts. Your grandmother will explain the legal details, but know this. I've made arrangements to protect both you and the cabin. The documents in the box will give you what you need. Use this information wisely, not for revenge, but for restoration. With love and confidence, Grandpa Chen. I read the letter 3 times, tears blurring the words. Grandpa had seen me. Really seen me. In a way no one else in the family ever had. Sleep was impossible. I lay awake watching snow fall outside my window. Memories of the cabin floating through my mind. The summer I turned 10, when Grandpa taught me to fish. The fall weekend when Grandma showed me how to make dumplings in the tiny kitchen. The spring break when I was 16, reading alone on the porch while everyone else went boating. The first time I felt peaceful being separate from the family. Morning couldn't come fast enough. The bank opened at 9:30 a.m. I was waiting outside at 8:45, stamping my feet against the cold, Grandma's key clutched in my gloved hand. I need to access safe deposit box 1458, I told the bank manager, a gray-haired woman named Mrs. Winters. Do you have the key? She asked, peering over reading glasses. I placed it on the counter. Name? Riley Chen. She typed something into her computer, then looked up sharply. 1 moment, please. 5 minutes later, she returned with a file. Ms. Chen, we've been expecting you to claim access to this box for some time. Your grandmother added you as an authorized user 3 years ago, but you'll need to sign some paperwork. After signing various forms, Mrs. Winters led me to a private room with the rectangular metal box. Take your time, she said, closing the door behind her. With trembling fingers, I inserted the key and turned it. Inside the box were several legal documents, all in protective plastic sleeves, meticulously organized. On top was a note in Grandma's handwriting. The truth your mother didn't want anyone to know. I spread the papers across the table, trying to make sense of legal terminology and formal language. Gradually, the picture became clear. The cabin had never been solely my parents' property to sell. My grandfather had created a complex trust arrangement. Mom owned only 40%. The remaining 60% had been divided in his will, 30% to Grandma May, and shockingly, 30% directly to me, bypassing my parents entirely. Even more surprising, when Grandma May passed away, her 30% would transfer not to her children equally, but entirely to me. The paperwork was explicit about this arrangement. But that wasn't all. A separate document detailed a significant loan my grandfather had given to my parents years ago. Money used to start Dad's business. With the cabin listed as collateral, the loan had never been fully repaid. My mind raced. Mom couldn't sell the cabin without my signature. She'd never told anyone about my inheritance, clearly hoping I'd never discover it. As the realization of my position sank in, My phone rang. Grandma May. "Did you find it?" she asked without preamble. "Yes." My voice sounded strange, distant. "Why didn't you tell me before?" "It wasn't time," she replied simply. "You weren't ready to stand up to them. Now you are." "But the trust, the inheritance. Why would Mom hide this from me?" Grandma sighed heavily. "Your mother has always been controlling. When your grandfather's will was read, she was furious. She told everyone he had left everything to her and your father, with small portions for Eric and Jessica upon their deaths. She showed everyone altered documents. And no one questioned it?" "I did. Your Aunt Julia suspected something wasn't right, but Linda was very convincing, and she handled all the paperwork. She thought I didn't know about the safe deposit box." "What do I do now?" I whispered. "First, make copies of everything," Grandma advised. "Then call Maya." Maya Kim had been my closest friend since college. Now an attorney specializing in family law, she was the perfect person to help navigate this situation. I spent the next hour at a copy shop, then met Maya for lunch. "Holy shit," she said, reviewing the documents over her sandwich. "Your mom has been lying to everyone for years. These are completely legal and binding. You own a major stake in that property, Riley. They can't sell without your consent. I can't believe she would hide this." Maya looked up at me, brown eyes serious. "Can't you? Think about how your mom operates. Control is everything to her." She was right. Moms need to control the family narrative, to position Eric and Jessica as the successful ones, while casting me as the perpetual disappointment. It all made a twisted kind of sense. "What's my next move?" I asked. "That depends," Maya replied, carefully organizing the papers back into their folder. "What do you want?" The question hung between us. Revenge? Justice? Recognition? I paused, searching for the right words. "I want them to see me. Really see me. And I want that cabin preserved, not sold off for Eric's latest scheme, or Jessica's condo down payment." Maya nodded slowly. "Then you hold your ground. Don't tell them everything you know right away. Let them make their move at this family meeting, and then you can decide how much to reveal." As I left the restaurant, my phone buzzed with a text from Mum. "Family meeting moved up this Sunday, 2 p.m. Be there. We need to discuss your behavior." I looked at the message, then at the folder of documents in my hand. "Oh, I'll be there," I whispered to myself. "But it won't be the meeting you're expecting." "You're sure these documents are valid?" I asked Maya for the third time as we sat in her office the next day. She sighed, adjusting her glasses. 100%. I verified everything. With the county records office. The trust is ironclad. Your grandfather knew exactly what he was doing. And you think I should keep this quiet until the meeting? Strategically, yes. Maya leaned forward. Your mother has been controlling the narrative for years. Let her present her plan to sell, thinking she has full authority. Then you can reveal what you know. I chewed my lip. It feels manipulative. It's protective, Maya countered. You're protecting your inheritance and your grandfather's wishes. We spent the next hour drafting a simple statement, something I could read at the meeting if emotions ran high. Maya also prepared a folder with certified copies of all the relevant documents. Remember, she said as I was leaving, you're not the bad guy here. You're standing up for yourself and honoring your grandfather's legacy. My next stop was Aunt Julia's apartment. I needed an ally within the family who would back me up. She answered the door in paint-splattered jeans, her art studio visible behind her. "Riley, come in, come in. I've been worried about you since Christmas Eve." I settled on her colorful sofa, surrounded by canvases and the smell of turpentine. "Aunt Julia, I need to talk to you about something important." Her eyes widened as I explained what I'd discovered. "I always knew something wasn't right," she murmured. "Linda was so insistent about handling everything after your grandfather died. She wouldn't let anyone else see the documents. Did you suspect she was hiding something this significant?" "Not exactly," Aunt Julia admitted. "But I knew your grandfather adored you. You were the only one who truly appreciated the cabin the way he did. The way he would sit with you for hours on the dock, teaching you the names of birds and trees." She shook her head. "It makes perfect sense he would want to ensure you had a say in its future." "Will you come to the family meeting on Sunday?" I asked. "I could use some support." She took my hand. "Of course. It's about time someone stood up to your mother." My last visit that day was to Grandma May. I found her tending the small herb garden on her apartment balcony. "So now you know," she said simply when I showed her the copies of the documents. "Why didn't Grandpa tell me himself?" She clipped a sprig of rosemary, its sharp scent filling the air. "He tried in his way. Remember the summer before he died? He took you fishing alone at the cabin." The memory surfaced, an unusually serious conversation as our lines dangled in the water. Grandpa talking about legacies and responsibility, about seeing beyond the obvious. I thought he was just being philosophical. "He wanted to prepare you," Grandma continued. "But then he had the stroke. After that, your mother moved quickly to take control. She told everyone what they wanted to hear." "She lied," I said flatly. "She convinced herself it was for the best. Linda always believed she knew better than everyone else. Grandma moved her small watering can among the herbs. She saw you as a threat, you know." "Me? Why?" "Because you're like your grandfather. Quiet, observant, not easily influenced." Grandma turned to face me. "Linda could never control him, and she's never been able to truly control you, despite her best efforts. It frightens her." I let that sink in. What will happen after the meeting, when everyone knows the truth? Some will be angry, some will be shocked, but the truth has a way of settling things. Eventually. She patted my hand. "You must be prepared to stand alone for a while." "I've been standing alone for years," I replied. "At least now it will be by choice." The next few days passed in a strange limbo. I didn't return to my parents' house, staying instead at the hotel. My phone remained mostly silent. A few guilt-inducing texts from Mom. One awkward call from Dad suggesting I was having some kind of breakdown. Nothing from my siblings. Aunt Julia called daily to check in. Grandma sent encouraging messages. Maya finalized our strategy. Meanwhile, I did something I'd been putting off for years. I started looking for a new apartment. My current place had always felt temporary, a way station until I figured out what I really wanted. Now, scrolling through listings, I felt a surge of possibility. On Saturday night, the eve of the meeting, I stood at my hotel window watching snow fall on the city and rehearsing what I would say. How do you condense a lifetime of being overlooked into a few careful sentences? How do you stand up for yourself without burning every bridge? My phone rang. An unfamiliar number. "Hello? Riley? It's Mark, Jessica's boyfriend." I frowned, in confusion. "Mark? Why are you—" "Listen, I think you should know what's happening. Your mom had Eric and Jessica over tonight to finalize the plans for tomorrow. They're planning to present the cabin sale as a done deal. They've already talked to a realtor and have a potential buyer. I gripped the phone tighter. Why are you telling me this? A pause. Because it's wrong. The way they talk about you when you're not there. Jessica doesn't know I'm calling. She'd kill me. Thank you, I said, genuinely surprised. Just be prepared. They're not expecting any resistance. After hanging up, I immediately called Maya. Change of plans, I said. They're moving faster than we thought. Bring everything tomorrow. She advised. All the documents. I can come with you if you want. No, I decided. This is something I need to handle myself. But I'll call you right after. That night, I dreamed of the cabin again. But this time, I wasn't outside looking in. I was standing on the porch, key in hand, watching the sunrise over the lake. When morning came, I dressed carefully. Not too formal, but put together. Professional. A statement that I wasn't playing family games anymore. As I drove to my parents' house, Grandpa's letter tucked in my pocket like a talisman, I felt strangely calm. For once, I knew exactly what I had to do. Sunday afternoon arrived cold and bright, sunlight glaring off the snow-covered lawn of my parents' house. I parked behind Eric's luxury SUV and Jessica's new convertible. Top up, of course, for winter. Aunt Julia's sensible sedan was already there, too. Taking a deep breath, I gathered my folder of documents, checked my appearance in the rearview mirror, and stepped out into the cold. With each crunch of snow beneath my boots, I felt my resolve strengthen. The front door opened before I could knock, Mom standing there in one of her carefully curated, casual outfits, pearls included. Finally, she said, lips tight. Everyone's waiting. No hug, no, how are you? Just impatience. Dad and Jessica sat on the long sofa in the living room. Eric paced near the fireplace. Aunt Julia occupied an armchair in the corner, while Grandma May sat regally in her favorite wingback chair, nodding slightly when she saw me. Nice of you to join us, Eric said, checking his watch pointedly. I'm right on time, I replied, taking the only remaining seat, a hard wooden chair clearly brought in from the dining room. Mom took her position in front of the fireplace, standing where she could command everyone's attention. Classic Linda. Chen power move. We're here to discuss 2 matters, she began. First, Riley's outburst at Christmas dinner, which upset everyone and ruined our holiday. Second, the future of the lake property. Actually, I interjected, I'd like to reverse the order. Let's start with the cabin. Mom frowned at the interruption. Fine. As you all know, your father and I have decided it's time to sell the lake property. It's become a financial drain, and frankly, none of you use it enough to justify keeping it. Speak for yourself, I murmured. She shot me a warning look. We've already spoken with a realtor, the Andersons. You remember them? Beautiful home on Lake Washington? They're interested in purchasing. The potential offer is extremely generous. And what's the plan for the proceeds? I asked, voice steadier than I felt. Your father, and I will retain 70% naturally, since it's our property. Mom replied smoothly. The remaining 30% will be divided equally between the 3 of you. 10% each. A generous arrangement, we think. Eric nodded. Makes sense. Very fair, Jessica agreed, not meeting my eyes. Only one problem, I said, opening my folder. It's not your property to sell. The room went silent. Mom's smile froze. Excuse me? The cabin doesn't belong solely to you and Dad. I pulled out the trust documents. According to Grandpa Chen's will and the family trust he established, You only own 40%. Grandma owns 30% and I own 30%. Dad leaned forward. What are you talking about? Your mother handled all the paperwork after her father died. Yes, she did. I passed him the certified copies. She also lied about what those papers said. Mom's face drained of color, but she recovered quickly. This is absurd. Where did you get these forgeries? From Safe Deposit Box 1458 at First National Bank. I turned to Grandma May. The box Grandpa set up before he died, and Grandma made sure I knew about. All eyes shifted to Grandma, who sat calmly with her hands folded. It's true, she said simply. My husband left the cabin divided this way. Linda, you've known this all along. Mom's composure cracked. You had no right. I had every right. Grandma interrupted. They were his wishes, put in proper legal form. You chose to hide them. Eric stood up, face flushed. This doesn't make any sense. Why would Grandpa leave part of the cabin to Riley, but nothing to Jessica or me? Because Riley was the only one who ever appreciated it the way he did. Aunt Julia said quietly. The rest of you saw it as a status symbol, or an asset. Riley saw it as a home. Jessica turned on me, eyes flashing. So what? Now you're going to block the sale out of spite? Because Mom made you sleep in the basement? No, I replied, keeping my voice level. I'm blocking the sale because that cabin means something to me. It's not just a cash cow to be milked whenever anyone needs money. You little... Eric started. That's enough. Dad interrupted, looking up from the papers. These appear to be legitimate, Linda. Did you know about this arrangement? The question hung in the air. Mom's eyes darted around the room, calculating. Of course she knew, Grandma May said. She was there when the will was read. She just chose not to share the information. I did what was best for this family. Mom snapped. That cabin was meant to benefit everyone, not be held hostage by someone who doesn't even understand its value. On the contrary, I said. I'm the only one who values it properly. Mom turned to Dad, shifting strategies. Sam, surely we can contest this. It's not right that your child who contributes the least should have control over family assets. The words stung, but I was prepared for them. Mom, do you really want to discuss contributions? Shall we talk about who took care of you when you had pneumonia? Who lent Eric money when his first business failed? Who helped Jessica with her master's application? Eric had the grace to look uncomfortable. Jessica stared at her manicured nails. This meeting is over, Mom declared. We'll speak to our lawyer and resolve this misunderstanding. It's not a misunderstanding, I said, standing up. I've already consulted with my own attorney. The documents are valid and binding. The cabin cannot be sold without my consent, and I do not consent. As I turned to leave, Eric caught my arm. Riley, be reasonable. We can figure something out. Maybe buy your share. Not interested, I replied, gently removing his hand. You're making a mistake, Jessica called after me. Mom and Dad won't forgive this. I paused at the doorway. Maybe not, but I'm finally doing what's right for me, and for Grandpa's legacy. Aunt Julia and Grandma May followed me out. The driveway. Grandma hugged me fiercely. You did well, she whispered. Your grandfather would be proud. As we stood there in the cold afternoon, watching my parents' front door remain firmly closed, I felt something shift inside me. The weight of seeking approval suddenly lighter, replaced by the strange, unfamiliar sensation of standing on solid. ground. "What happens now?" I asked. "Now?" Aunt Julia smiled. "You decide." The week after the confrontation passed in a blur of legal consultations and emotional whiplash. My phone alternated between radio silence and explosive texts. "Mom, I raised you better than this. Your selfishness is destroying this family. Eric, look, I get you're upset, but this is excessive. Let's talk numbers. I'm sure we can reach an agreement." Jessica, Mom's literally had to take medication because of you. Hope you're happy. Dad, surprisingly, sent only one message. "Need to speak with you privately." I showed them all to Maya during our follow-up meeting. "Classic manipulation tactics," she observed, handing my phone back. "Your mother's trying guilt, Eric's trying to buy you out, and Jessica's blaming you for imaginary health consequences. Predictable. And Dad, that's interesting," she admitted. "He might be ready to separate himself from your mother's narrative. Worth exploring, but cautiously." I nodded, but my attention had shifted to the additional documents we'd found in Grandpa's safe deposit box. Papers I hadn't had time to fully examine before the family meeting. "So, what exactly am I looking at here?" I asked, pointing to a stack of loan agreements. Maya spread them across her desk. "These show that your parents borrowed substantial sums from your grandfather over the years, nearly $200,000 in total. For what? Various things. Eric's college tuition, Jessica's first car, a kitchen renovation. But the biggest loan, $75,000, was to help your father's business during a downturn in 2015. I frowned. I never knew about any of this. "Most families don't discuss finances openly," Maya said. "But here's the interesting part. According to these records, only about half of those loans were repaid before your grandfather died. So my parents still owed him money?" "Exactly. And since these debts weren't forgiven in his will, they're technically still owed to his estate." She tapped the papers. "Which means your parents owe approximately $100,000 to be divided between your grandmother and you." The revelation left me reeling. No wonder Mom had been so desperate to control the narrative after Grandpa died. She wasn't just hiding my ownership stake in the cabin. She was burying significant family debt. "I need to talk to Grandma," I said. I found her in her small apartment, tending to the orchids that lined her windowsill. When I showed her the loan documents, she sighed heavily. "I suspected as much," she said. "Your grandfather mentioned these loans before he died, but your mother insisted they had been forgiven. Did you ever ask to see proof?" Grandma carefully misted an elegant white bloom. "I tried. Linda said it would be inappropriate to discuss such matters while we were all grieving. Later, she claimed the papers had been lost in the move to your parents' new house." "Convenient," I muttered. "Linda has always been skilled at creating convenient realities," Grandma replied, her voice tinged with sadness rather than anger. "What will you do with this information?" The question weighed on me. Legally, Maya had confirmed we could demand repayment. But did I want to push this confrontation even further? "I'm not sure yet," I admitted. My phone buzzed. Dad asking again to meet. After some hesitation, I agreed to coffee the next day. The cafe we chose was neutral territory, halfway between his office and my apartment. He arrived looking tired, the lines around his eyes deeper than I remembered. "Thank you for coming," he said, awkwardly settling into his chair. "I need to explain some things." "I'm listening." He stirred his coffee absently. Your mother. She means well, Riley. She's always wanted what's best for the family. Is hiding legal documents and family debts what's best? He winced. It's complicated. After your grandfather died, we were in a difficult financial position. Eric's business venture had failed, and we'd co-signed his loans. Jessica needed graduate school tuition. The medical bills from your mom's illness had drained our savings. So Mom decided to just pretend certain financial obligations didn't exist. She convinced herself it was temporary, Dad said, softly. That we'd sort everything out once we were back on our feet. But then, one temporary solution led to another. I finished. He nodded, looking ashamed. I should have insisted on transparency. I let her handle things because she always seemed to know what to do, but... For the first time, I saw my father clearly. Not as the distant, vaguely disappointing figure of my childhood, but as a man who had abdicated responsibility, who had let my mother's controlling nature determine our family dynamics. Dad, do you know what it's been like for me? I asked quietly. Being treated like I didn't matter? Being pushed aside while Eric and Jessica got everything? His eyes filled with tears. I failed you. I see that now. The simple acknowledgement unlocked something in my chest, a tight, painful knot I'd carried for years. Not forgiveness, exactly, but recognition. I don't want to cause more pain, I said finally, but I can't keep letting Mom run everything her way. I understand, he said, and I'll support whatever you decide about the cabin. It's yours and your grandmother's to determine. As we parted, he hesitated, then added, For what it's worth, I'm proud of you, Riley. Standing up to your mother. It takes courage I never had. His words followed me as I walked home through the winter afternoon. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. Found more documents. Come by tomorrow? The next morning, Maya laid out her discovery. Your grandfather anticipated your mother might try to control things. After his death, he left a letter with his attorney to be delivered to you and your grandmother if certain conditions arose, like the cabin being sold without proper consent. She handed me a sealed envelope, yellowed with age. Inside was a letter written in Grandpa's unmistakable handwriting, and a single key, different from the safe deposit box key. My dear Riley, the letter began. If you're reading this, then your grandmother and I were right about Linda's intentions. There is one more thing I've set aside for you, something that even Linda doesn't know about. In the boathouse at the cabin, beneath the floorboards under the workbench, you'll find a waterproof container. This key opens it. Inside is something I believe will give you peace. Love always, Grandpa Chen. I looked up at Maya, my heart racing. I need to go to the cabin. The drive to the cabin took nearly 3 hours, winding through snow-covered forests. I hadn't been there in almost 2 years, not since the summer after Grandpa died, when Mom had insisted on modernizing the rustic kitchen he'd built himself, replacing his hand-carved cabinets with sleek, characterless ones from a big box store. As I pulled up the gravel driveway, memories surfaced with each familiar landmark. The ancient pine tree where we'd hung a rope swing, the stone path Grandpa and I had laid together one summer, the weathered dock extending into the lake, now partially frozen along the edges. The cabin itself stood silent and snow-dusted, windows dark. I used my key, the one Grandpa had given me on my 16th birthday, saying, This place will always be home to you. Inside the air was cold, but not unwelcoming. I walked through quietly, noting changes Mom had made, new furniture, different artwork. But the bones of the place remained Grandpa's. The solid beams overhead, the riverstone fireplace, the wide, plank floors worn smooth by generations of footsteps. The boathouse stood at the water's edge, a simple structure housing Grandpa's old fishing boat and decades of accumulated equipment. The workbench stretched along the back wall, his tools still hanging in their designated places. Kneeling on the cold concrete floor, I located the section of wooden boards beneath the bench that sounded hollow when tapped. Using a screwdriver from Grandpa's toolbox, I carefully pried up the planks to reveal a small space below, and within it, a waterproof metal box. Grandpa's key slid perfectly into the lock. The box opened with a soft click. Inside were more documents. But these weren't deeds or loans. They were photographs, letters, and a small leather-bound notebook. On top lay a note in Grandpa's handwriting. The true history of our family, which your mother has tried to rewrite. Heart pounding, I began to read. The notebook chronicled Grandpa's early struggles after immigrating to America, working multiple jobs, saving every penny, eventually starting his own small construction business. The photographs showed a younger version of him, building the cabin with his own hands, log by log. One passage stood out. I bought this land with the first profits from my business. The bank wouldn't give me a loan. They said a Chinese immigrant was too risky. So I saved for 5 years, living in one room, eating simple food, working from dawn until night. When I finally had enough, I paid cash. The look on the banker's face when I counted out the bills. That was a moment of true victory. The letters revealed something even more surprising. Mom's resentment toward the cabin had begun in her teenage years, when she'd been embarrassed by its rustic simplicity compared to her friends' vacation homes. Linda is ashamed of what she calls our humble lifestyle, Grandpa wrote to a friend. She doesn't understand that true wealth isn't in appearances. I sat on the cold boathouse floor, pieces falling into place. Mom's obsession with status, her determination to rewrite our family narrative, her favoritism toward Eric and Jessica, who embraced her values. It all stemmed from her own shame about her background. And I, quiet, observant, content with simplicity, like my grandfather, was a constant reminder of what she wanted to forget. My phone interrupted these revelations. A text from Aunt Julia. Warning. Linda and Eric heading to cabin now. Jessica, too. Moments later, another text. Your grandmother and I are following them. 30 minutes behind. I barely had time to process this information before headlights swept across the boathouse windows. Car doors slammed, followed by angry voices approaching. Quickly, I returned the box to its hiding place and replaced the floorboards. I was just standing up when the boathouse door flew open. Mom stood framed in the doorway, Eric and Jessica flanking her like lieutenants. Her face, normally carefully composed, showed naked fury. "What do you think you're doing here?" she demanded. "Visiting property I partly own," I replied, surprised by my own calm. "We had an offer on the table," Eric cut in. "The Andersons were ready to sign. Do you have any idea how you've embarrassed us?" "The better question," I said, "is why you were trying to sell property that isn't yours to sell." Mom stepped forward. "This ridiculous power play stops now. We're your family, Riley. You can't just what? Stand up for myself? Honor Grandpa's wishes? Don't you dare invoke my father!" Mom's voice rose sharply. "You have no idea what he wanted." "Actually, I do." I gestured around us. He wanted this place preserved, not sold off to fund Eric's business schemes or Jessica's condo down payment. Jessica gasped. "How did you—" "I pay attention," I said. "I always have. That's why Grandpa trusted me with his legacy, and not you. Mom's expression turned calculating. This is about Christmas, isn't it? About the basement? You're punishing us over something so petty. This isn't punishment, I replied. It's consequences. For years of dismissing me, using me, treating me like I didn't matter. Oh, please, Eric scoffed. Always the victim. No, came a voice from the doorway. Always the giver. Grandma May stood there, Aunt Julia beside her. Despite the cold, Grandma looked formidable in her red wool coat, her white hair gleaming in the dim light. For years, she continued, entering the small space, Riley has given to this family money when Eric needed it, time when Jessica needed help, care when you were sick, Linda. And what did any of you give in return? A basement to sleep in at Christmas, mockery, dismissal. Mom's face flushed. Mother, you don't understand. I understand perfectly, Grandma interrupted. You've spent your life running from who you are, Linda. Ashamed of your father's hands that built this place. Ashamed of your origins. And now, you're ashamed that your youngest child is the one who inherited his spirit. The air in the boathouse seemed to freeze. No one moved. The cabin stays, I said into the silence. It's not for sale. Not now. Not ever. And if you want access to it, things will have to change. Is that a threat? Eric growled. No, I replied. It's a boundary. Mom stared at me as if seeing a stranger. Then, without another word, she turned and walked out, Eric and Jessica following like always. Grandma May reached for my hand. Are you okay? I nodded slowly. I think, for the first time in years, I actually am. 2 months passed after the confrontation at the cabin. Winter softened into early spring, ice receding from the lake edges, the first green shoots pushing through garden soil. I'd moved out of my apartment into a newer place, a small but sun-filled condo closer to work, with a balcony where I'd already started planning a container garden. The physical move mirrored my internal one, stepping into a life truly my own. My phone buzzed less frequently now. The initial barrage of texts and calls from my family had dwindled to occasional, stilted communications. Mom hadn't spoken to me since the boathouse confrontation. Dad sent weekly check-ins, careful and apologetic. Eric had tried negotiating, twice more before giving up. Jessica oscillated between angry accusations and tearful pleas to fix the family. I set the phone aside, focusing instead on the pile of documents spread across my new dining table. Maya had helped me establish a formal trust for the cabin, with Grandma May and me as trustees. We'd developed clear guidelines for its use and maintenance, funded by the back payments Dad had quietly arranged for the loans Grandpa had given them. A knock at the door interrupted my work. It's looking good, Aunt Julia said when I let her in, glancing around at the half-unpacked boxes and newly painted walls. Very you. She handed me a housewarming gift, a painting she'd done of the cabin at sunset, colors blazing across the lake. Julia, it's beautiful, I whispered, deeply touched. I started it years ago, actually, she admitted, accepting the cup of tea I offered. After one of those weekends when I watched you sitting alone on the dock while everyone else was caught up in their dramas, there was something so peaceful about you. I wanted to capture it. We settled on my new sofa, spring light streaming through the windows. How are things with the family? She asked carefully. Complicated, I admitted. Dad's trying. He came to help me move last weekend. It was awkward, but better. And Linda? I sighed. still not speaking to me. Grandma says she's told everyone who'll listen that I've betrayed the family. Your mother has always confused control with love, Aunt Julia observed. It may take her a very long time to understand what you've done. What have I done, Julia? Sometimes I still wonder if I've overreacted, You've reclaimed your dignity, she interrupted firmly. Never apologize for that. Later that evening, as I arranged books on new shelves, my phone rang, Jessica's name flashing on the screen. After a moment's hesitation, I answered. Can we talk? Her voice sounded different, less confident, more genuine. In person, I mean. There are things I need to say. We met the next day at a coffee shop halfway between her workplace and mine. She looked tired, her usually immaculate appearance slightly frayed around the edges. Mark and I broke up, she said without preamble. Or rather, he broke up with me. I'm sorry, I offered, genuinely meaning it. Don't be. He was right. She stirred her latte absently. He said he couldn't be with someone who treated people the way I treated you. Said it showed a character flaw. I remained silent, unsure how to respond. At first I was furious, she continued. But then I started thinking about all the times I've used you, the master's application, the times I borrowed money, the holidays when I got the guest room while you got the basement. She looked up, eyes unexpectedly bright with tears. Why did you let us treat you that way for so long? The question struck me harder than I expected. I thought, that's what family was. Sacrificing for each other. But then I realized it was only me doing the sacrificing. Jessica nodded slowly. Mom always made it seem normal. Like you were just, I don't know, designated to be the helpful one. She sighed. Eric's the success story. I'm the charming one. You're the responsible one who handles the hard stuff. Roles we got assigned when we were kids, I said. But I don't want that role anymore. I don't blame you. She hesitated, then reached across the table. I miss my sister, the one who always had my back, even when I didn't deserve it. Can we try again? Differently this time. It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. We talked for another hour, really talked, perhaps for the first time since childhood. I set clear boundaries. She listened without interrupting. We agreed to meet again the following week. As spring deepened, I focused on the cabin. With the trust funds, I hired contractors to fix the sagging porch, update the ancient plumbing, and restore Grandpa's handcrafted cabinets that Mom had removed. Grandma May advised on every decision, her knowledge of Grandpa's vision guiding our choices. One warm weekend in May, I invited Grandma, Aunt Julia, and Maya to the cabin for its unofficial reopening. We spent days cooking, laughing, telling stories about Grandpa. For the first time, I slept in the master bedroom. Not because anyone had designated it to me, but because I'd chosen it. On Sunday morning, as we sat on the dock drinking coffee, an unexpected car pulled up. Dad stepped out, looking uncertain, until I waved him over. I hope it's okay, he said hesitantly. I wanted to see what you've done with the place. I'm glad you came, I told him, meaning it. He surveyed the restored cabin, emotion crossing his face as he recognized pieces of his father-in-law's original work that had been preserved or brought back. He would have loved this, Dad said softly. This is what he always intended. Later, as Dad prepared to leave, he handed me an envelope. Eric asked me to give you this. He's trying, Riley, in his own way. Inside was a check, repayment for the loans I'd given him years ago, with interest, and a brief note. "I'm sorry. This is a start." That evening, sitting on the porch watching sunset gild the lake, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known in years. Not everything was resolved. Mom still refused contact. Some wounds would take years to heal if they ever did. But for the first time, I was living on my terms. Not seeking approval, not staying small to keep peace, not sacrificing my worth for others' comfort. Grandma joined me, wrapping a shawl around both our shoulders. "Your grandfather used to sit exactly where you're sitting now," she murmured, watching the same sunset. I leaned against her shoulder, feeling the quiet strength we shared. I think I finally understand what he was trying to teach me all those years. "And what was that?" she asked. "That sometimes the most valuable inheritance isn't what's written in legal documents," I said. "It's knowing who you are and standing firm in that knowledge, no matter what." She squeezed my hand. "He always said that you were the one who truly saw." 1 year later, I stood on the cabin's newly restored dock, watching summer sunlight dance across the lake. Behind me, sounds of laughter drifted from the open windows. Aunt Julia and Grandma May playing cards on the screened porch. Maya tending the grill, her new girlfriend arranging wildflowers on the outdoor table. The cabin had blossomed under our care. We'd preserved its character while making thoughtful updates. Solar panels on the south-facing roof, a small vegetable garden near the kitchen, window seats built into the lakeside view. Grandpa's original furniture had been carefully restored. His fishing gear still hung on the boathouse wall, and his chess set occupied its traditional spot on the porch table. My phone chimed with a message. Jessica, confirming she'd arrive tomorrow with her new boyfriend, a kindly middle school teacher who seemed genuinely good for her. Our relationship had evolved over careful months of tentative coffees and honest conversations. Not perfect, but healthier. Another message followed. Eric sending a photo of the business plan he wanted my opinion on. After the cabin confrontation, he'd struggled, then surprisingly pivoted away from high-risk ventures toward a sustainable construction company focused on affordable housing, thinking about what Grandpa would have valued. He'd explained during one of our cautious lunch meetings. Dad visited regularly now, sometimes helping with maintenance projects, often just sitting quietly on the dock with a fishing rod. "Your mother asks about the place," he'd mentioned during his last visit. "She'd never admit it, but I think she misses it." Mom and I had spoken only twice in the past year. Brief, formal exchanges at Grandma's birthday gathering. The anger between us had cooled into something more complicated. A mixed terrain of hurt, regret, and unspoken words. I'd left the door cracked open. Whether she'd walk through it remained her choice. A car crunched up the gravel driveway, interrupting my thoughts. A familiar blue sedan, Dad's, but with 2 figures inside. I walked up from the dock, my heart beating faster when the passenger door opened, and Mom stepped out. She looked older, somehow smaller, hesitating beside the car, until Dad gently placed a hand on her shoulder. "Riley," she said, her voice formal. "Your father thought. That is, I wondered if we might talk." I nodded, leading them to the pair of Adirondack chairs Grandpa had built decades ago, recently sanded and refinished in their original cedar color. Mom sat stiffly, taking in the restored cabin. "You've kept it up well." "Thank you," I replied. "Would you like some tea? Grandma's inside." "Not yet." She clasped her hands tightly. "I need to say something first." Dad touched her arm encouragingly before walking toward the cabin, giving us privacy. For a long moment, Mom stared out at the lake. When she finally spoke, her voice was so quiet, I had to lean forward to hear. "I was ashamed of this place when I was young," she admitted. My friends had fancy vacation homes with imported furniture and swimming pools. Our cabin was simple, rustic, built by my father's immigrant hands. She traced a finger along the arm of the chair. I swore my children would never feel that shame, that they would have the best of everything, that no one would ever look down on them. But, Mom, I said gently, Grandpa was proud of what he built. There was never any reason to be ashamed. I know that now. She blinked rapidly. When I saw what you've done here, preserving his work instead of replacing it, I realized how wrong I've been. Not just about the cabin, but about many things. It wasn't quite an apology, but from my mother, this vulnerability was unprecedented. Would you show me the changes you've made? She asked. An olive branch extended between us. We walked through the cabin together, my mother touching restored cabinets and original door frames with something like reverence. In Grandpa's study, now a reading room filled with natural light, she paused at the photograph I'd framed. Grandpa at the workbench, teaching a young me how to sand wood. He loved you differently, she said softly. Not more than Eric or Jessica, but differently. I was jealous of that. The connection you shared. He tried to connect with all of us, I replied, in different ways. Yes, but I was too busy trying to make everyone perfect to see it. She touched the photograph gently. Too busy trying to erase where we came from. Later, as everyone gathered for dinner on the wide porch, I watched my fragmented family navigate tentative new terrain. Grandma May showed Mom her herb garden. Jessica helped Maya with the food. Eric and Dad discussed the solar panel system. Not seamless, but civil, healing. After dinner, as twilight settled over the lake, Mom approached me at the dock's edge. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, watching a loon dive beneath the purpling water. But I would like permission to visit sometimes, to try and understand what my father loved about this place. It's not about forgiveness, I told her. It's about moving forward differently, with honesty, with respect. She nodded slowly. The cabin is always open, I continued, to anyone who respects what it represents. Grandpa's legacy, our family's true history, not the polished version you wanted, but the real one. Immigrant hands building something lasting, generation by generation. Later that night, after everyone had gone to bed, I sat alone on the dock. Above me, stars reflected in the still lake water, creating two infinities, one above, one below. I thought about the long journey from that cold basement at Christmas to this moment of quiet peace. The hurt wasn't entirely gone, but it had transformed into something useful. Boundaries that protected me, wisdom that guided me, strength I hadn't known I possessed. My phone lit up with a text, a photo from Aunt Julia, the whole family on the porch at sunset, unposed and imperfect. Grandma's eyes closed mid-blink, Dad looking slightly away. Mom's smile tentative but real. Eric caught mid-laugh. Jessica, with her arm around me. And me, standing tall, no longer in anyone's shadow. I saved the photo, then set the phone aside, and breathed in the night air, pine and water and possibilities. The basement girl was gone. In her place stood a woman who had claimed her inheritance. Not just the physical cabin, but the strength that ran in her blood, the quiet dignity that Grandpa had modeled, the courage to define her own worth. I watched the stars until my eyelids grew heavy, then made my way back to the cabin. As I passed the main bedroom, the one that had always been reserved for my parents during family gatherings, I paused. Mom had taken the small guest room without comment, a silent acknowledgement of the shifted dynamics. Though much had changed, some wounds would take years to fully heal. But tonight had been a beginning, tentative and imperfect, but genuine. Fall arrived with a blaze of color, transforming the woods surrounding the cabin into a tapestry of gold and crimson. I'd taken to spending long weekends here, often alone, sometimes hosting small gatherings of friends or family in carefully planned combinations. One misty October morning, Grandma May arrived unannounced, carrying a leather portfolio I'd never seen before. "I've been waiting for the right time," she explained as we settled by the fireplace. The season's first fire, crackling softly. This belonged to your grandfather. Inside the portfolio were sketches, dozens of them, detailed drawings of the cabin at different stages of construction, floor plans with meticulous measurements, designs for furniture, some of which I recognized. Around us, others never built. "He documented everything," Grandma said, turning the brittle pages carefully. Every nail, every board, every decision. He wanted to remember the process, not just to enjoy the result. "Like a meditation," I murmured, tracing my finger along a detailed drawing of the riverside stones that formed the fireplace. "Exactly," she smiled. "Your grandfather believed that how you build something matters as much as what you build." Among the technical drawings were more personal sketches. My father as a young man, helping to raise a wall. Mom as a teenager, looking slightly resentful but still participating. Eric and Jessica as children playing on the half-built porch. Me as a small child, solemnly handing Grandpa nails from a coffee can. "I didn't know he drew these," I said, emotion catching in my throat. "Few people did. Drawing was his private joy." She turned to the last page, a sketch of all of us together in front of the completed cabin, dated the summer before he died. "He wanted you to have these eventually, to understand the full story." "Why now?" "Because you've earned them," she said simply. "You've honored his vision while creating your own. That's what he always hoped for." The portfolio inspired. A project, a comprehensive family history centered around the cabin. Not the sanitized version my mother had cultivated, but the authentic one. Grandpa's immigration story, his struggles and triumphs, the cabin built by immigrant hands, the family that grew within its walls, complete with all our complexities and contradictions. I started interviewing family members, recording their memories. Aunt Julia contributed photographs. Dad shared stories I'd never heard about helping Grandpa dig the foundation by hand one blistering summer. Even Eric and Jessica participated, their recollections adding depth to the narrative. The most surprising contributor was Mom. After initial resistance, she gradually opened up, sharing memories of her childhood at the cabin. Both the resentment she'd felt as a teenager and earlier happier times, her complicated relationship with her father, her dreams for her own children. "I thought erasing our history would protect you all," she admitted during one of our recording sessions. "I was wrong." The book took shape over the winter months, a rich tapestry of stories, photographs, and Grandpa's drawings. I worked on it evenings and weekends between client projects at my design firm, which had flourished since I'd stopped trying to please everyone and started trusting my creative instincts. Spring arrived again, the second anniversary of the Christmas confrontation that had changed everything. The cabin hosted a small gathering to celebrate the book's completion, hand-bound in leather similar to Grandpa's portfolio, copies made for each family member. "The Chen Family Legacy." Mom read the title aloud, her finger tracing the embossed letters. "It's beautiful, Riley." "Open it," I encouraged. Inside, the dedication read, "For Grandpa Chen, who built more than a cabin. He built a foundation for generations, and for all of us who are still learning how to stand on it." Mom's eyes filled with tears as she turned the pages, seeing her father's drawings published alongside family photographs spanning decades, including recent ones showing our tentative reconciliation. The final chapter, New Foundations, showcased the cabin's restoration and the healing it had sparked. "Thank you," she whispered, "for preserving what I nearly destroyed." Later, as guests dispersed, Mom lingered. "I have something for you," she said, handing me a small wooden box. "I found it among your grandfather's things after he died. I kept it, though I knew it was meant for you." Inside was a simple iron key, different from the ones I already had. "It opens a cabinet in his workshop," she explained. "I never looked inside. That was between you and him." The next morning I went alone to the boathouse. Behind Grandpa's workbench was a small cabinet I'd always assumed was locked because the key was lost. The iron key turned smoothly in the lock. Inside were more sketchbooks, dozens of them, documenting not the cabin's construction but my growth. Me learning to fish, me helping in the garden, me falling asleep in Grandpa's arms. Each drawing was dated spanning from my infancy until just weeks before his death. A letter was tucked into the final sketchbook. "Dear Riley, if you're reading this, then I was right about you, all along. From the time you were small, I saw in you what I saw in myself. Not ambition or charm or a need for approval, but something rarer. The patience to build slowly, the wisdom to value substance over appearance, the courage to be who you truly are. Your mother and siblings will follow different paths, as they should. But you, I think, understand what matters most. Not the facade we present to the world, but the foundations beneath. Not how others see us, but how we see ourselves. This cabin is my legacy to our family. But you are my spiritual heir, the one who understands why I built it board by board instead of hiring others to do it faster. The one who knows that some things can't be rushed or bought, only earned through time and care. Build your life as I built this cabin, with intention, with honesty, with your own hands. And when times are hard, remember that the strongest structures are those that bend with the wind, rather than break against it. With love and faith in who you are becoming, your Grandpa." As I sat in the quiet workshop, holding the evidence of Grandpa's quiet, constant love, I realized that the past year's journey hadn't just been about reclaiming the cabin or standing up to my family. It had been about discovering who I was always meant to be. Someone who built things that lasted, who valued truth over comfort, who understood that real strength often looks like gentleness. Outside, morning light sparkled on the lake. Inside, I held my inheritance. Not just property or possessions, but a way of being in the world. The legacy of a man who had crossed oceans and built a home with his own hands. A legacy I would carry forward, in my own way, one careful step at a time. 2 years later, on a golden September afternoon, cars lined the cabin's driveway and spilled onto the grass alongside. Picnic tables dotted the lawn, covered with bright cloths, and mason jars filled with wildflowers. A hand-painted banner stretched between 2 pine trees. Chen Family Reunion. This gathering had been my idea, not a holiday dictated by tradition or obligation, but a new celebration created on our own terms. Everyone was invited, immediate family, distant cousins, old friends, new partners. The only requirement was respect for the space and for each other. I stood on the porch steps, watching people arrive, Grandma May sat in the place of honor, a handmade quilt across her lap, despite the warm day. Aunt Julia arranged food on the outdoor tables. Eric helped Dad hang string lights between the trees, while Jessica's new fiancé supervised their toddler. "Son, my nephew," as he toddled through the grass. Mom approached hesitantly, carrying a large covered dish. "I made Grandpa's favorite dumplings," she said, "from his original recipe." "He'd like that," I replied, taking the dish. "Thank you." Our relationship had evolved into something neither of us could have imagined 3 years ago. Not the automatic closeness she shared with Eric and Jessica, but a careful respect built on honesty rather than performance. She had stopped trying to control me. I had stopped needing her approval. In that space between, something authentic had begun to grow. As afternoon mellowed into evening, family stories flowed as freely as the lemonade and iced tea. Cousin Way described Grandpa teaching him to drive on the cabin's dirt roads. Uncle James recalled helping lay the stone path. New members of our extended family circle listened, absorbing the history of the place that had shaped us all. After dinner, as fireflies began to rise from the grass, I clinked a glass for attention. "I have an announcement," I said, voices quieting across the gathering. "As most of you know, I've been the primary caretaker of the cabin these past few years." Murmurs of appreciation rippled through the group. But Grandpa never intended this place to be controlled by just one person. He meant it to be a true family legacy. I unfolded a document. "So today I'm establishing the Chen Family Cabin Trust, which will ensure this place remains in our family for generations, accessible to all who respect its history and contribute to its care." I explained the simple rules. Family members could book time at the cabin through a shared calendar, with holiday access rotating fairly. Everyone would contribute what they could to maintenance: money, time, or skills. Decisions about majors, changes would be made collectively by the trustees. Currently me, Grandma May, and surprisingly Mom, who had proven her commitment to preserving Grandpa's vision. "This doesn't mean I'm stepping away," I clarified. "But it does mean I'm sharing the responsibility, as Grandpa would have wanted." Later, as small groups chatted around campfires and children played hide and seek in the twilight, Mom found me alone on the dock. "That was generous," she said, sitting beside me. "Sharing control of the cabin after fighting so hard for it." "It wasn't about control," I replied. "It was about protection, making sure it wasn't sold or changed beyond recognition." She nodded slowly. "I understand that now." After a pause, she added, "Your grandfather would be proud of the balance you found, standing firm when necessary, extending grace when possible. I learned from watching him," I said, "and from seeing what happened when we lost that balance as a family." We sat in companionable silence, watching moonlight silver the lake surface. Finally, Mom spoke again, her voice uncharacteristically hesitant. "Riley, do you think you'll ever be able to forgive me? Truly forgive me?" I considered the question carefully. "I think forgiveness isn't a single moment, but a process. We're in it now." She accepted this with a small nod. "Fair enough." As the reunion wound down, guests departing with hugs and promises to return, I found myself in Grandpa's favorite spot, the rickety wooden swing at the edge of the property, overlooking both the cabin and the lake. The quiet aftermath of gatherings had always been my favorite time, the air still humming with echoes of laughter and conversation. Grandma May found me there, settling beside me with a contented sigh. "A good day," she observed. "A very good day," I agreed. "You know," she said, her voice thoughtful. "When your grandfather built this place, everyone told him it was too much work, too expensive, too far from the city. But he had this vision of what it could mean for our family, across generations." She patted my hand. "He would be so pleased to see you carrying that vision forward, but making it your own." I thought about the journey of the past 3 years, from the basement at Christmas to this moment of genuine belonging. How standing up for myself had ultimately strengthened rather than severed family bonds. How setting boundaries had created space for authentic connection. I never thought we'd get here, I admitted. After that Christmas, I was ready to walk away completely. Sometimes we need to be ready to walk away before others can see our true value, Grandma said wisely. You showed tremendous courage, not just in confronting the family, but in leaving the door open for reconciliation afterward. As stars emerged overhead, I reflected on all that had changed. Eric had found purpose beyond chasing status. Jessica had discovered authenticity beyond her perfect facade. Dad had found his voice. Mom had begun to make peace with her past. And I had found myself, no longer the family afterthought, but a person of substance and worth, following Grandpa's example of quiet strength. The cabin lights glowed warmly against the darkening sky, windows illuminating family members moving inside, washing dishes, arranging sleeping spaces, continuing conversations. Not perfect people, but real ones. Not a perfect family, but one working toward healing. I thought of Grandpa's letter, his faith in who I was becoming. The journey wasn't over. Family dynamics are never fully resolved, only continually navigated. But something fundamental had shifted, not just in how others treated me, but in how I carried myself in the world. No longer shrinking to make others comfortable. No longer seeking validation through sacrifice. No longer accepting less than I deserved. As Grandma and I walked back toward the cabin, arm in arm under the star-filled sky, I felt Grandpa's presence in the night air. Not as a ghost, but as a foundation beneath my feet. A legacy of courage, integrity, and self-worth that no one could ever take away. Not just a cabin inherited, but a way of being in the world. Not just a home reclaimed, but a self discovered. The basement girl had truly found her place, standing tall in the light.